of Homeschool Support and Government Affairs for HEAV, and I'm so glad and excited that you are with us today because I have some important news to share with you about homeschooling and some potential changes that we're going to have with the homeschool law this year. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for being with us. And this is Giving Tuesday, and it is so important that you join us in working together in protecting your rights as a homeschool parent, initiating laws that will benefit you as a homeschool parent, and also protecting the laws that we already have. So thank you for being with us today. I'd love to get to know you also. So if you can write your comments in the chat. I'd love to know how many children you're homeschooling. And just let me know if this is your first year homeschooling or how long you've been homeschooling. That would be great so that we can kind of get to know each other. I homeschooled 3 of our 5 children from kindergarten through high school and have finished doing that. So it's been wonderful to be able to work with all the new homeschoolers that we've seen come into the homeschool community in the last few years. We're so thankful that you are with us and that you've joined HEAV. And this is a great opportunity for you to show your support for the work that HEAV is doing in protecting your rights. We could not do this without you. Absolutely could not. And so we are thankful for the many volunteers that share their time and their efforts with us, but there are also expenses that we have. And so we are so thankful to have an office. We're thankful to have counselors that can answer your questions for free, but it still costs money. And so we just ask that you consider giving a donation to HEAV. And at 12:30, we're going to have an opportunity for you to double your donation. And so please plan on giving whatever you can, whether small or large, it's perfectly fine. Anything helps, everything helps, because we can put it all together and really make a difference for homeschooling in Virginia. And we are so thankful for those of you that are doing that and joining us today in this effort. So it's so good to see all of you here. I'm just so thankful for that. And so many of you have been homeschooling for a while. And I know many of you, I've talked to you on the telephone through the years. HEAV has really been around for a long, long time. And when we started 40 years ago, this will be our 40th anniversary, HEAV began at a card table in the General Assembly with a group of parents who for 3 years prior to that time had been talking to their legislators, had been wanting to homeschool, and had not been able to do that because it wasn't legal for them to homeschool. And so legislation had been introduced beginning in 1981, and it was not passed and went into effect until 1984. And so HEAV was in the General Assembly, had a card table outside of the committee meeting room, and we asked those parents who came out of the committee room and had just testified if they'd like to sign up for a newsletter. And that's how HEAV actually began 40 years ago. And we connected with those first parents. When the law was first enacted in 1984, there were almost 2,000 homeschoolers. Now, there are more than 61,800 homeschoolers now. We have seen a tremendous growth in home education, and especially in the last 2 or 3 years with the issues with COVID, with schools being closed, with parents looking for other educational alternatives. So we have seen tremendous growth in home education. I hope you've been able to join us at one of our conventions, especially the new homeschoolers that may not know that we have a convention in Richmond each June. We'd love to have you join us there, where you can gain information and learn about how to teach your children, the different subjects and how to teach those, how to meet the challenges that you face. we have so much information. We'd love for you to join us for that. So we're here to protect your freedoms, and we want you to join us in doing that. HEAV for the last 40 years has been there to represent you at the state legislature, to speak to the legislators on issues that concern homeschoolers, to protect the laws that we have, and introduce these new laws. We also have a legislative team. It's certainly not just me. We have a wonderful, working, very, very active team that works year round, not just prior to the legislative session that begins each January, but we work year round in protecting your rights. We have a bill researcher who has already begun looking at the bills as they started coming out. The deadline for filing bills for this year, for January's 2023 session, has already ended. So the bills are coming out of Legislative Information Services and being posted online. So we have a team that's looking at those bills right now and beginning the search for words that relate to homeschooling, to information that may impact us in a positive or a negative way. We're already doing that. We have a full-time lobbyist at the General Assembly that is there sitting in committee rooms, listening to testimony, ready to testify, ready to watch out for the rights of homeschoolers. Every day that bills come up that could affect us, she is definitely there. We also have a school board monitoring team. This team has just been phenomenal. We have learned so much about how homeschool laws are applied at the local district that you live in. It has been very, very eye-opening to see how some districts misapply the law. They have new people that come in that are not trained, that are there to work with homeschoolers, but because they're not trained in the homeschool law, they don't apply it properly. So we have parents that call us, and we work with them in order to get situations resolved for the misapplication of the law. We often call and talk to these district liaisons and instruct them on the law, send them copies of the homeschool law, make sure that the information and the notice of intents that they may provide on their websites are consistent with the law. I'm sorry to say that many of them are not. Many of them are asking for information that the law does not require. And so we have to talk to them about that and make sure that they understand the law correctly. So there are many, many opportunities for us to work with local school districts, local superintendents, and just cover some of these issues that come up. And we often find out about them in school board minutes. We find out about them by listening to online meetings in different school boards. We have a whole team of homeschool parents that work with us on listening to these meetings, on reviewing the minutes that are posted publicly, and asking questions, sending us information so that we can follow up on this and make sure that these things are corrected so that you can have a better homeschool experience. So we have analysts that analyze policy at local school boards so that we can make sure that policy is also correct. And so there's so many ways that HEAV serves you. I know that very often this work is behind the scenes, and so you don't know what's going on because there are things that we're taking care of every single day. In fact, it's hard to believe, but since the beginning of this past school year, we have made over 90 direct contacts by phone or email with over 90 different school districts in the state of Virginia. And that's a lot of work on the legislative staff. So we are so appreciative of your support in helping us take care of these situations that come up. So we want to protect your laws. We want to watch for negative legislation. We want to speak on your behalf. We have counselors that will answer your questions. But another thing that is very, very important for you to do is to make sure you contact your legislator. We'll send out alerts when things come up that you need to know about. And that is the time to be active, to make that phone call, to write that email to your representative to let them know your stand on these issues. That is so, so important. I just can't emphasize that enough. So make sure you get involved with us in these things. Now, I'm going to talk to you today about two important legislative changes that HEAV is getting ready to make during this legislative session. Since 1984, we have certainly made many, many changes to the homeschool statute, many small changes, incremental changes, one thing this year, another thing the next year. And so we have made lots of small changes to the homeschool statute, but we are getting ready to make a major change in the homeschool statute that will affect the way everyone files a notice of intent form. So if you're a parent that files a yearly notice of intent form each year, then I want you to listen to what HEAV is planning to do. First of all, we want to streamline the process of filing that NOI, notice of intent form, that you have to do every year. Presently, you have to show what criteria you have complied with in order for you to homeschool. And you know that there are 4 options. You have to have a high school diploma or higher, be a certified teacher or tutor, provide a program of study such as distance learning, correspondence course, or in any other manner. You have to provide evidence by writing a letter of how you can provide an education for your child. So, and then of course, by August 1st the next year, you have to provide academic evidence of achievement in order to continue to homeschool. Well, it's interesting that the first 4 criteria, any parent can comply with one of those 4 ways to begin homeschooling. So the question has come up in talking with HSLDA and discussing the homeschool statute and some ways that we feel like we could benefit in changing this. Any parent can meet one of these 4 requirements. So why do we need these 4 requirements? Why can't we just have parents file a notice of intent form that would include the name, the age of the child as of September 30th, and the address and contact information, and file that with the division superintendent, and then simply provide the evidence of progress the next year? Why have to jump through one of these 4 hoops in order to homeschool when anyone can comply with one of the ways to homeschool? So we will be proposing and introducing legislation that will eliminate options 1, 2, 3, and 4: high school diploma, certified teacher, program of study, or writing a letter as to how you can homeschool your child or why you're qualified to do that. So let's get rid of that. Let's simplify the homeschool law. Simply file a notice of intent with your child's name, address, contact information, and age of September 30th. And then at the end of the year, file the evidence of progress. It would simplify it for not only you as a homeschool parent, but would also simplify it for the division superintendent, because often they have to hire people just to work with homeschoolers because there's so many homeschoolers now. So let's make this simple for the district, for their staff, for the homeschool liaison, and for homeschool parents. So we won't have to make 90 to 100 contacts each year with the local district to work out these problems, this misapplication of the law, and just entering into the homeschool process. You see, we have to realize that homeschooling has been around for 40 years now, and we have a good, very good track record. Homeschoolers do very well on SATs, on ACTs, PSATs. Colleges are offering scholarships to homeschoolers because they do so well academically and they're prepared for college. And so why go through this process of checking off one of those 4 options in order to begin? HEAV has prepared several different studies that we can give to our legislators, and we can talk to them about the success of homeschooling. So we've got that prepared to give to them. We also have an infographic that we're going to give with them that's just kind of a screenshot of homeschooling, where we are, what we're doing, how well we're doing academically. So we have these things prepared to give to our legislators so that they can have the facts on who we are and what we do to make the right decision for homeschool families. And so we need your support with this. And of course, that's going to cost money in order to produce these studies, in order to get them into the hands of our legislators. And so we really need your academic as well as your financial support to get this done. So that's one of the things. Delegate John McGuire will be the patron of this legislation. He will be introducing this in the House and the House Education Committee. And so we can certainly want to support him and let him know that we are behind him in this. And he wants to support homeschool families. So we are so thankful that he has stepped up and he's willing to do this for the homeschool community that he supports. And secondly, there is another item of legislation that we are planning to introduce. And this is to add a provision to the closed meeting law that would allow religious exemption information to be discussed in a closed session at a school board meeting. Now, we know that this has taken place in most cases. There are closed meetings for the discussion of religious exemption. But the law only implies that boards should carry on these meetings out of the public eye. And so, and the information that they're relying on is 22.1-254.1G. And that statute simply says a superintendent or school board cannot disclose information to any person outside the local school division regarding the information on a notice of intent or religious exemption letter. And so it's kind of implied that the meeting needs to be closed. But we'd like to make sure that parents are protected in this situation and that there is no awkward situation with the media wanting to have more detailed information about who is applying for religious exemption or who these homeschool parents are. So we want to make sure that it is very clear, very above board. And so we want to add an additional meeting that has to be closed to the closed meeting law. And so that's a protection for homeschoolers for your information that is very private and does not need to be made public in case a reporter or the media wants more information about a family situation. And Delegate Karen Greenhall of Virginia Beach has agreed to introduce this legislation for HEAV and for homeschoolers that she supports also. And it's interesting that Delegate Greenhall was a homeschooler herself and taught her daughter at home. And now she is a delegate in the General Assembly. She will be also introducing this in a subcommittee in the House of Delegates. And so I want you to watch for that. Of course, we're going to keep you posted on all of these items. So make sure that you are signed up for the HEAV alerts, that you're looking on our Facebook pages where we're discussing these things, and you'll be aware of what to do, what action to take, and who to call when these come in committee, because these bills definitely will have opposition. And so we want to make sure that your legislator knows that you are a homeschool constituent and that you support this legislation, and you need to ask them directly to support this legislation for homeschool families. So there are a couple of other legislative items that we are anticipating to come up that I want to let you know about. First of all, we're expecting to see education savings accounts legislation, and the title of this will be Education Success Accounts for Virginia parents. And this is new legislation that has a new name this year. They're called ESAs, Educational Savings Accounts. This is, of course, will be Education Success Accounts. And this legislation will be introduced also, and it has to do with parents who have children in public school. And the parent would either have to have their child in public school for at least one or more semesters, or have their child going into kindergarten for the first time. Then if that is the case, then the state will provide a portion of the state average daily membership funds that would go for that child's education. This money would go into an account for the parent, and the parent could use it for private school or for homeschool. And so this is legislation that we are watching very carefully. It has not been published yet, but from legislation that we saw in the past last year that was introduced, we are watching for the new version of it to come out this year to make sure that homeschoolers are protected. Number one, that it does not impact the homeschool law, and that parents can use this money without having strings attached. And there certainly will be regulations that go along with this. There will be accountability measures for anyone who takes this money. They will not be considered homeschoolers under the homeschool statute 22.1-254.1, but they will be another group of parents who are teaching their children at home who would take this state tax money. So we're watching for that very carefully to make sure it does not negatively impact homeschoolers under the homeschool statute. So we'll let you know and keep you informed about that legislation also. Then we've recently had something come up that is a big change. The Virginia School Boards Association yearly puts out their legislative stand on different types of legislation. And they are proposing a change to their opposition to homeschool participation in Virginia high school league sports. Now, if you've been a homeschooler any length of time, you know that the Virginia High School League is the organization, a private organization, that regulates intramural or interscholastic sports teams that compete against each other, like football, basketball, band, soccer, things like this, speech, debates. When a high school works in a team situation against another high school for trophies or awards or recognition, things like this. Well, the Virginia High School League has opposed homeschool participation for probably 15 to 18 years. And multiple bills have been introduced in the General Assembly demanding that the Virginia High School League include homeschool families, homeschool students, if they desire to do this. And they have all failed except for two. And they were both, once they did pass a few years ago, they were vetoed by the governor. And so it has never passed in the 15 to 18 years that it has been introduced. And one of the reasons is because the VSBA, the Virginia School Boards Association, has opposed this. And so they are considering, has not passed yet, but we have found out through our school board monitoring team that looks at the minutes and reviews the meetings that are being had. They are proposing that this be their opposition be taken off of their legislative agenda, and that each local school district be allowed to make the decision themselves whether or not homeschoolers can participate. So this is in process right now. I'm telling you about this because this is a real change in position for the VSBA, and it could affect homeschoolers. So this is something we are monitoring carefully and looking for. So we'll let you know as this develops. So make sure you're with us on those alerts. And then the last thing I'd like to let you know about is we saw just before Thanksgiving, we saw that Fairfax County Public Schools in their legislative program has suggested that they want to require religious exemption parents to report the academic process, the progress of their students. In other words, religiously exempt students would need to take some type of standardized achievement test or have an evaluation, and that would need to be submitted to someone to approve or disapprove. Now, remember that religiously exempt students are exempt from compulsory attendance. School boards cover those who are under compulsory attendance. So HEAV is strongly opposed to any change in the religious exemption statute or any method of accountability that would remove the freedom of parents to homeschool because of their religious convictions against sending their children to public school. And so we certainly will come out against this and oppose this legislation. This has never been a question in the more than 50 years since there has been a religious exemption statute. In fact, at the beginning, this was the only way a parent could homeschool prior to the Virginia homeschool statute being implemented in 1984. So lots of questions about this. Who would monitor this? Who would set the standards? What would happen if a child did not meet the standards? Does that mean if you don't meet the standards, then you cannot have a religious exemption, a religious conviction to not send your children to public school? In essence, it would put religious exemption students under the homeschool statute. And so we are certainly going to oppose this. We want you to stand with us. This will take time and effort and finances, phone calls, emails to legislators if this becomes legislation or a proposed bill. At this point, it is not. It is just a discussion. But these are the types of things that we look at. These are the types of things that we monitor. We want to make sure that you are aware of these things, that you're watching with us, that you'll give us a call if you learn that your school board is doing something that we need to know about. Please let us know. We need you to stand with us during this time of giving. It's so, so important. The double match begins at 12:30. This is a great time for you to take part in supporting HEAV. We need your support. There is so much going on. We live in a time when the educational landscape is changing. And it's important that we maintain our freedoms and our rights to homeschool. We cannot do this alone. We need you to be with us and to stand with us, not only with your prayers, not only with your phone calls and contacting your legislators, but with your financial support, because we just simply cannot do this without you. And so this double match is getting ready to start right now. And so please click the link. Please let us know how you can support us. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have, any issues that, what is the hardest thing about the homeschool law that you're aware of? What's the hardest thing you have to comply with the homeschool law that I could help you with, or answer your questions about, or that you'd like to see changed? I mean, we're here to listen to you. We're here to work through the situations that you may be faced with, and to advocate for you and with you, and help you understand what your rights are as a homeschool parent. So, are there things that I can help you with, or questions that I can answer? I am happy to do that. And just write your questions in the chat, if you will, and I'll take a look at those as they come across the screen and see if there's any way that anything that I can do to help you. And I appreciate so much you standing with us, and appreciate all the things that you do to be with us and to really stand up for your rights as parents. You know, the children belong to us. God gave our children to us, not to the state. It doesn't take a village. It takes a family to raise children and to teach them. And so I am so thankful for you standing with us, for participating with us on this special day. It is a real opportunity, and I appreciate it so much. So thank you. Thank you for joining me today, and thank you for your support.